I keep it inside of me. Yeah, I keep it inside. It's killing the man in me. Yeah, it's killing the man. Keep it inside, I keep it inside of me. Yeah, I keep it. Welcome to the Crisis of Manhood Podcast, a space dedicated to unpack deep conversations about manhood. Now, the world is changing and so is manhood, and that is why we have this platform to have those deep conversations that oftentimes as men we find difficult to talk about. I'm your host, Peter Mkuka, and today we'll be looking at men and mental health. To help me unpack this conversation, I'm joined by Mr. Mutale, someone that I've known for a very long time in different spaces, someone that I respect so much because of his work and his passion for better communities, and someone that I know to have been in the space of drugs and substance abuse and now mental health for a very long time. So I'm expecting to learn a lot from him through our conversation today. So welcome, Mr. Mutale.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
And thank you for joining us. Maybe for the sake of our viewers, maybe you can just introduce yourself, the workspace that you are in, and the work that you're currently doing, both as an individual as well as an organization. I know you've been running Decisive Minds for quite some time, and you've been doing some amazing work there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Basically, Decisive Minds is my baby.
Mhm.
Yeah, I founded it, and I'm the current executive director there. I think we founded it somewhere around 2017. So it was working. We were working with it before we registered it, and that time I think I was still doing some work with Chaps. Yeah, but we officially registered it in April 2018. And we've been working in mental health spaces, since that time. But not just in mental health, we also, interlinked it with other, diseases, public health, diseases such as HIV, TB, yeah, also hepatitis B and C.
I think you're doing some amazing work. I've been a witness to the impact that your works are making in the communities, and I'm glad we have you here on the podcast. So maybe before we move forward, I know when you talk about mental health, that's a subject that now is emerging, especially in our setting here in Zambia. And now talking about mental health for men, before we go deeper into it, how do you define mental health, just in basic terms?
Okay, so by the way, mental health has been an old, thing. And this is why, for example, those people that are studying, courses like psychology, it's something that started way back. If you look at some of the philosophers that developed certain theories, certain philosophies, you'll see that it started a long time ago. But like you have rightly said, in Zambia, I think it's like a new phenomenon. And the reason being that, sometimes we take time to learn about certain things or tend to ignore, maybe because of our culture and just the way we live our lives and the belief systems. Yeah, so in terms of the definition, mental health, maybe in simpler terms, basically it's just the well-being of the mind of someone. Yeah, but if we just talk about the mind, in most cases, we might estimate the impact of mental health. So mental health, usually I defined it in what I call the wheel of health, because it talks about the social, it talks about the physical, it talks about the intellectual, it also talks about the emotional as well as the spiritual. So when we talk about the spiritual, the wheel of health, basically, it talks about what we are, who we are as human beings. A human being is centered on this wheel of health. So when anything is affected, in this wheel of health, for example, you are affected physically, you are affected, intellectually, you are affected spiritually, you are affected socially, or you are affected, emotionally or psychologically, you will see that even your mental health will definitely be affected. So it's a broader term that basically talks about these 5 realms that I've just, brought out, because whatever we do, even here where we are, whatever we do, there is an aspect of, mental health. And a lot of people do mistake mental health to some of the mental challenges that people go through. So when we talk about mental health, basically it's the well-being of an individual, the way we are. I'm okay physically, I'm okay intellectually, I'm okay, spiritually, I'm okay. But we can't say we are always 100% okay. But what we mean is when someone is able to do, the daily activities of his life or her life, it's called mental health.
Interesting. Already learning a lot of new things. For the next question, why do you think mental health is important for men, and how does it affect relationships, or how does it affect men in relationships, even just like the physical health? Recently, I actually learned that mental health can, or the stress can actually give you ulcers. I did not know that.
Exactly.
So how does it affect the
Yeah.
physical side, the relationships, and all those things for
Yeah,
men?
exactly. Like I was explaining on the wheel of health, what basically happened, the body is interlinked. Whatever is affected with the body, be it something that is, what I would call a hard body or, a soft body, software versus, hardware.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what we see in most cases is what we consider to be health in most cases. But we also have intangible things that are intrinsic, those that are inside us. So you will discover that and probably this is why a lot of people do not consider mental, health to be, something that is important. But everything starts from that. Because for you to be here interviewing me on this podcast, it's because your mind is okay, your mental health is fine, and your physicality also is actually, fine. So when we talk about mental health, not just for the man, but for everyone, it's very important. But because we are centering this topic on men, I think mental health is very important because for a man to do anything that they need to do, their mental health has to be up to date. It has to be upgraded all the time, and it is because, like what you are saying, you discover that people do not understand that when we have a lot of mental health challenges, the body will also be affected. There are things we call psychosomatics, So problems that may start as from the side, from just the mind, if they are not, properly managed, they will start affecting, the somatic, the cells, the body. As a result, what you talked about, when there's too much stress and you are not managing the stress well, there are certain chemicals in the systems that will be developed called cortisol. So that cortisol is the one, if it is not well, if it is too much produced, it becomes a chemical. Remember, it's a chemical. Now, if it is too much and the body cannot deal with it on its own, it will create what you said, the ulcers. It will create other problems within the system. And for example, I always say the body works at three levels. It works at the level of the conscious, like where we are. It looks at the subconscious. Also works at the unconscious. Now, the unconscious is the largest. It's the largest thing. It keeps more memories, the largest memory, then followed by the sub, and then the conscious. So whenever we are discussing things, they will be stored somewhere. Okay, but in most cases, when we are discussing things that are not pleasant to us, or whenever something that is bad happens, in most cases for us men, it will be slidden direct into the unconscious. Now, in the unconscious, these are it's the memory that keeps things for so many years, sometimes without realizing. There are certain things that you have kept and they have not yet come out. They can maybe come out when you start having interactions, maybe with a professional, a person, that you may have trusted, and you are able to think through and be able to bring out, things. Now, for a man to perform as a man, the mental health has to be okay. It has to be strong. It has to be strengthened, and a man needs to be open, minded. So when we relate it with relationships, you can't have a better relationship when your mental health is not okay. Okay, whether having a wife, having a girlfriend, having a family around you, even with children, you always have problems. Maybe take just a simple example: when you are stressed from work or things are not working well, when you go home, the people that will suffer are the people that are at home. You might not even realize that you are creating this problem, but maybe the wife, will remind you to say, but today, why are you doing things, like this? Yeah. So it's at that point of realization that you realize to say, oh, I think there's something that I'm not doing well. So in most cases, it's because your mental health is not okay. Now, mental health is at levels. There's what we call neurosis, where this is just some basic mental health challenges that we go through. But we also have some psychotic ones, which are, more deep, like where someone might even be admitted at China. There's a condition known as schizophrenia, where someone, has hallucinations. It might be auditory, it might be even visual, where someone is paranoid, seeing things that are not there, hearing different voices. Sometimes there's what we call tactile, feeling like there are some things that are moving around the body. So those are major ones. But all of us, we do go through mental health challenges. It just depends the level. So I always say, there's a slim line between what you consider yourselves to be normal, and anytime you might turn to the other side, depending on how you are keeping.
And especially if you're not taking care of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
which I believe is something that's very common for us as men.
For men, exactly. Yeah. Especially, like I said, our background is so much, it's a patriarchal background. So there is a lot of expectation by society from men. And the man wants to feel like he's a man, There's what they call stoicism, where you want to make sure that you keep up appearance as a man. You want to show your masculinity as a man. You also, want to show that resilience. Even when things are tough, you want to pretend at home to say things are okay when things are tough. But in mental health, we don't advise people to do like that. You may break it.
When you look at our context here in Zambia, do you think most men understand about mental health? And what do you think would be the signs to show if someone is going through some mental health issues?
Yeah, so in terms of understanding, a lot of people talk about mental health nowadays. Yeah, so the understanding could be maybe at different levels. So I'd say mostly men, even if they understand something, sometimes they tend to ignore even what they understand. But I would also say there is some kind of certain misunderstandings from other men, and actually from most men. Because whenever we talk about mental health, I always see, even when we are doing some, sensitizations to communities, when you talk about the moment you mention mental, they associate it with Chinama, they associate it with psychiatric problems, the ones that I talked about, the psychotic ones. They don't understand to say, if you are becoming forgetful about certain things, it's a sign that your mental health is being affected. Sometimes you may be in the office, you have a pain here, and you keep looking for that pain. Exactly. You are in a meeting, you are failing to concentrate. All those are little mental health challenges. But remember, if you don't manage those, they will keep on, piling up, and they become, a problem. And someone said, a chain of stressors can lead even into depression because you are not managing, It's like the physical, problem. For example, you have malaria, you're not going for treatment to the hospital. The malaria will keep on, going up, and as a result, it might even kill you. So whatever disease, whatever infection, whatever problem that someone has, they need to seek, some, intervention such as medication. And in this case, mental health is it's a talk therapy. You need to talk to someone, but unless, worst case scenarios where someone might also need some medication. So in terms of knowledge, people do have some kind of understanding of mental health, but we still have a big number of people that do not fully understand it. So I think this is why we need to talk about, these things time and again, just like we are doing now. We also sometimes I usually have some opportunities to go and talk. Sometimes you are called at ZNBC just to talk about these mental health related issues. Now, you saw just some few months or weeks ago, you saw, we are talking about the statistics of violence. You and I, we do, some works together where violence is one of them. You see, heightened number of violence cases. It's because of failing to manage ourselves. If you fail to manage your anger, you end up beating someone, sometimes beating them badly, they end up dying. It's because of the same. You are not managing your mental health. So people do not understand all these things. So this is why I remember when we were in Mumba, when we trained some people and they came out, they were saying, huyu ni mentor, such kind of things. It's because the understanding is still very much at the basic level. But it is always important that people should understand and learn to say everyone has mental health challenges and they are just at different levels. So we really need to, visit someone who can be helpful. In the morning, I was in, someone just called me from the NBC. I don't even know her. She just introduced herself and she posed a question about GBV and mental health. So I was just explaining, how these things do occur and some of the effects, even long-term effects about whatever could be happening. Sometimes we may think, as young people, you may think that because someone is young, like the young guys that you work with here, you may think that when they are doing things, it's not affecting them. Now, remember the unconscious that I spoke about. So certain things, they will be hidden there. And sometimes they will come out years later. And sometimes you won't even know why someone is behaving like that. That's why mental health should be checked, just like we do for physical health. In terms of learning to say this person, I think, is having some mental health challenges, sometimes it's because someone who is always active, you see the inactivity. Someone used to like maybe watching football, playing football or madalas or whichever games, doing certain things, you see that they withdraw. They don't, feel like happy doing those activities that they were happy doing. It's a very good sign. Nowadays, people are abusing a lot of substances, alcohol and many other drugs. That also could be a very good sign to show that someone has basically a problem in, mental health related challenges. The other thing could be aggressiveness, anger, failing to manage the anger. If it's a parent, is at home, the children just make a slightly mistake, the way you react, that aggressiveness, also it indicates that something is wrong, with some. So there are these small, changes that you see in someone. Probably you need to help someone to say, I think you may need to find someone to talk to you. So sometimes the starting point might not even be a professional. The starting point with these small ones is just to, talk about some of the challenges that you are going through to someone. That's why we need to have friends that we trust. Even the young people, they need to have at least someone they may say they trust. They need to have mentors. Whenever they are challenged by something, they need to bring it out. It's through speaking that it will help you to reduce, some of the challenges that we go through. Yeah. So it's small things. So we need to know ourselves. And that's why myself, I always encourage what we call social capital, where we need to be interlinked with people that we can trust. So if I have a problem, I go home, I have a family, I find that there's nothing, and where I'm coming from, I have nothing. I need to pick up a call where I can call Mr. Mkuka to say, Peter, I don't have anything. Is there anything that you can provide for me? So Peter will also respond because he has empathy, he understands me, he knows that I'm a colleague, he will feel the problem that I'm feeling. We need to have such kind of association. So that could be the starting point. When you are challenged with something, you speak about it. It lessens the pressure. Exactly. Then when you are failing now to resolve those things, that's when you need to go, to find some help somewhere professional. Sometimes we have counselors in church. We have counselors even at police. The victim support unit, they have some trained counselors who someone can go there. If someone is abusing substances, even at the Drug Enforcement Commission, if you are fearing that I cannot go to Decisive Minds because I know the people that work there, you can still go to, even to the police, they can help you. Even just seeking information. We have professionals everywhere now. From the Psychology Association of Zambia, the vice president is an officer from police. He's the Dr. Moyo. And apparently, coincidentally, we grew up together, such kind of things. So it's everywhere. Help is everywhere. But in most cases, like we said, men will always be men. It's difficult for them just to bring out. And mostly, it's because of how we have been, raised up. So we are trying to break, these beliefs, trying to break some of these cultures so that people should be free to speak. We want to normalize mental health related talks. We talk about them. Someone should be free that I had a problem and it was resolved through talking to someone. I had this, we resolved it because someone was able to deal with it. That's how we need to normalize. And it has to start from the young people.
And if you know someone who is going through something like that, something that we have discussed, they are struggling with drugs and substance abuse, maybe as a coping mechanism because of their mental health issues, you obviously have heard for yourself where you're supposed to go. But of course, at the end of of this program, we'll be able to share some of the places where people who are seeking for help can go to.
Exactly.
Yeah, so moving on, yeah, we talked about stigma. I know there's a lot of stigma around mental health and also self-stigma. Maybe you want to expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah, exactly. So the major one is the internalized one, the self-stigma, if people can be strengthened on their own, okay, it's very easy to get healed. But mostly the problem starts with ourselves. Even in the HIV circles, that's why there are a lot of mental health issues. HIV have been around close to 30 years, but we still have problems. People failing to go and get medications freely. People failing to go and test. Even up to now, they struggle. Reason, it's because a lot of them have the internalized, stigma. So that stigma is the one which is more difficult because it reduces on yourself, your self-esteem, your confidence levels, even your self-efficacy, in trying to do things. So this is why we encourage people to say they need to come out, let them be themselves, and you need to talk about something yourself. Acceptance is the first step towards healing. Once you accept that I am in this situation, it's easy now to look at steps to find, solutions to those, kind of problems. Then the externalized one also, because of the weight mental and a lot of people, and this is why Chinama here, very close with you here, Chinama offers different services, but because Chinama has been, subjected to negative, narratives, because it has, remember, Chinama is the largest, psychiatric or mental health institution, government owned in the country. So that stigma that is attached to the institution also, it has created problems. So, for example, if someone is abusing and they need to take him to a facility, they don't have money, Chinama will be able to accommodate them for free. But people do not want to be associated with Chinama. But with time, I've seen that bit by bit, people that have passed through Chinama, we have colleagues that we usually interact with that have been, to Chinama. One was just graduating. He's a very good colleague. He was graduating yesterday. I'm not going to mention the name. I didn't get the permission. He was graduating. He always talk about this to say, I've passed through Chinama. Chinama really helped me. And many other people have passed through this institution. So bit by bit, it's being, this stigma is being demystified, bit by bit. But we also need to continue talking about these things because stigma can only end or it can only be reduced once we continue talking about these, things, negative narratives, so that we turn them into positive, so that people should be able, to be free to deal with these things. And the other thing, because we say we are men and we are considered to be strong, as men. So when you do certain things, even the age group of, adolescents, boys and young men, it's the same. So we bring them up that way. In a home setup, if we start talking about these things while we are young, like me, I do encourage my children, even other guys that I, stay with, to be open. Of course, when I'm home, I'm not a psychologist or a mental health expert. I'm a parent to them. So I always encourage them to open up, talk about these things, no matter how difficult it is. Talk about them. If it's a wrong thing that you have done, of course, I may, say one or two things that may offend you in a way, or that I may talk about and without knowing that it may offend you. But it is good you speak about it. No matter what happens, it will pass than just keeping it to yourself. Because keeping is what has brought problems to a lot of people. So I would also illustrate, the way we keep things like a bin where we throw litter. Okay. So when we start throwing litter in a bin, okay, if we don't empty it, what happens? It will start overflowing. Okay. They will start, falling. Like Zambia is associated to a lot of failing to manage our waste. So even at homes, when this litter is, start overflowing, when the rain comes, what will happen? The rain it will create some, some germs within,
And diseases.
exactly, and eventually diseases.
Yep.
So the same people that were littering that place and failed to manage it are the same people that will be affected. That is exactly how the mind also works. So when you have an issue, a small issue happens, maybe you have an issue with your wife, you have an issue with someone at work, and you keep it, you say it's small. Those small things, they will build up. So once they build up, they become a big problem. And that's why when we talk about stress, it's one of those things. They also start leading us into anxiety, leading us into depression, leading us into substance use, and many other negative things that, we want to cope with. It is because we are failing to deal with these things from the beginning. So this is why, since we are talking about the stigma, this is why stigma has to be dealt with whenever we have an opportunity.
Yeah.
So we need to speak more about the importance of mental health.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I think this space also provides that that opportunity to send out this information to a lot of people that don't know about it. So maybe just moving on, we see that when we talk about stigma and you talk about men's behavior towards seeking help. First of all, what do you see as some of those challenges that affect men from seeking for help or just being vulnerable to talk about something that they're experiencing or something that they're going through, which then tends to lead to them not being able to seek for help, especially linking it to mental health?
Yeah. So one of them is mental health is considered to be nothing to men. Okay, because men consider themselves to be very strong. Okay. Two, it's because of how society acts on men, because we are considered to be strong, and society has taught us that whatever happens, we need to move. No matter how difficult something is, we just need to make sure that when we move through, we have that resilience, but without realizing that whenever we were alone, that's when you see the actual problems, because all these things, when you are with people, you have this face, okay, but once you move away where you are alone, that's when, especially during time. And one of the things that I didn't talk about, when we talk about some of the things, it might be signs or symptoms, is lack of sleep. Because during the time that you want to sleep, you are alone, everyone is sleeping, that's when a lot of stuff now are coming out. So you see that even sleeping is not going to be there. So the major reason in Zambia and Africa in particular is because of our culture. Our culture has taught us that we need to be strong whenever something is happening. Two, we have taught us that we are stronger, and for me to go to the hospital, it's a situation where my body is paining. So these other things, it's easy for me to manage them. So those are some of the major, two things that I would attribute, health to. It's not just mental health. Health for a man, even you would find that it will take the madam, sometimes it will take you to be on a wheelbarrow if you don't have a vehicle to go to, to the facility to access the service. Exactly. So it's because of that mindset, and we grow with it. So we become, thick-skinned, and it becomes very difficult for us to decide. And now this is why we are trying to challenge and also to show people, to say, guys, even if we have grown like this, there are certain things that we can change for the betterment of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The difference with us men and women are always talking about their issues. But for us men, it's over, it will deal with itself. Things will never deal with themselves. They will just blossom, come up the time that you least expect them. And people will be surprised. But what has happened? So for example, if you like grief, okay, you lose someone, and people tell you that you are strong, you cannot cry, you don't even need to cry. So you may think that it is okay. It's not normal. It's not okay. It's fine to express yourself. So sometimes there's what we call postponed grief. Okay, there will be a funeral somewhere. The person who died, you don't even know them. Maybe you just escort me to say, no, let's have a funeral. Maybe to get Kochabe. So the moment you reach there, you don't even know the person that died. The way you break, start crying, then people will be surprised. They should have been very close. But and yet you didn't even know the person. Reason is because You had these issues that you kept for yourself because you thought you were strong, but they will break you down at some point.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even in terms of violence, that's why we see a lot of, negative things coming from us men, because we think we are okay with whatever is happening, and yet we are not okay. We need help wherever we are.
Yeah.
I always tell my wife that, when I'm home, please treat me well, because this is what is supposed to be my paradise. I go through a lot of stuff wherever I am. So when I come here, I want to offload with you and have a challenge. If I fight with my staff, when I'm here, I want to talk to someone about these things. So you should not underestimate these things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Mtel, it's been a pleasure, but
Indeed.
I think I have to let you go. Time is not with us. But thank you so much for accepting our invitation to come to the podcast. Before I let you go, maybe just talk about some spaces or places where men seeking for mental health support can go to.
So it's always a pleasure to be, to be part of this. We want to encourage, this institution to grow, and also, to disseminate information everywhere, because what we are discussing now, it will go everywhere. People will be able to listen, and we want first to encourage men before we talk about where they should go. We want to encourage men to be as open as possible, talk about these things freely. And nowadays we have WhatsApp groups, we have different groups where people are able to express. Mostly you see people expressing, themselves in secrecy. Don't mention, hide my name. We want people to be coming out, really, as long as it is something that is talkable. Of course, there are certain cases that require privacy. They require, issues to do with confidentiality. Yeah. But it is always good to talk about these things to encourage each other. So in terms of where people can access services, it's everywhere. You can access a service. That's why even in churches, I would encourage churches to have strong counseling departments in churches. Where the church where I am, I also do counsel even the young people that are, getting married. So we encourage that. So I've been also proposing to the leadership of the church that we also need to have a strong counseling department, so that people, not just from our members, but even those that wishes to seek some help, they need to go to a church and be able to find some help in the church. That is one way of evangelizing. I also spoke about government institutions like health institutions. Nowadays, there are first levels. I think every first level has a mental health department. They can see. We have a lot of psychiatric clinical officers, psychiatric nurses that have been trained at China. Now we also have the graduates that are being graduating. Mulevi Mwanawasa was offloading some graduates who have become graduates today in mental health programs. So we have a lot of people in facilities like government facilities, but we also have like the Drug Enforcement Commission, depending on what the problem is. If someone has GBV issues, they can go to the police victim support unit to be able to help. Drug Enforcement Commission will also be able to help, in terms of drugs. But also institutions like ours, Decisive Minds, can provide all, aspects of help that may be required, as long as it is mental health related. But also many other facilities like Chinama facilities. We have Sanit House, which also offers specifically for substances. But my emphasis is help is everywhere. People should be free. If they don't know anything, feel free to talk, to talk to any neighbor within the communities who should be able to link them. Yeah. We are also, as Decisive Minds, please feel free. But in most cases, our programs are so much centered in communities. So for us, we follow the people. So if people think that there's a problem of mental health somewhere, we can follow them and start some discussions. We are encouraging to form groups where people should be discussing their issues. CIDAS also has a department they call men's health. Okay, so they also talk about different, health programs, including mental health. So all these facilities, we are able. It's just that most of the facilities, we don't usually have access to talk more about them. Sometimes the media requires that someone pays something for them to have, access to it. So I think we have a lot of spaces that people can be able to. Otherwise, thank you so much. It has been a lovely time, and these are programs that we need as society, especially us as men, because today we are mentors of these young people who very soon will become men themselves. We want to produce responsible men, so that when they marry women who are already activated. And today, most of the young men, they marry women who are activated, and them, they are still unactivated. So when they go there, they find these, gaps.
There's no balance,
Exactly. There's no balance. So as a result, it's violence after violence. So we are encouraging, and what your organization is basically doing, Men of Honor is doing fantastically well. We know in the next 3-5 years, we'll be talking about other stories. So thank you so much for inviting me.
It's been a pleasure. And maybe before I let you go, just maybe you can share how people can contact you for Decisive Minds.
Decisive Minds.
So as you share those contacts, also maybe you can just look into the camera, speak to a man out there who is probably going through some mental health issues, just from your heart.
Okay. So, Mr. Man, be it young or an adult, please feel free to ask for help. Help is always there. Be open to yourself, because you will be saved the least time you expect it. We are here as Decisive Minds. We are based in Chalala. Our programs are all over, Lusaka, but our address is just after Mosotunya. For those that know Mosotunya Road from Woodlands Stadium, So you go straight, then when you meet the ring road, you bypass it, you go straight. Yeah. So it's Zambia. It's at the corner of Zambia and Chikunda streets. Yeah. And the contact number for me, you can always get in touch. It's 0977 855797. 0977 But you can also get us on Facebook, Decisive Minds. You'll find it, or even on Twitter. On Twitter, it's Decisive Zambia. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure. And these conversations will help us to respond to some of the outcomes we get from mental health. We see a lot of suicide levels keeping escalating. Yeah, no, most
so many issues.
Exactly. Hopefully we can have you again, just to expand, because this is not a subject that we can talk about in 30 minutes. So maybe we can do an expansion of it. But thank you so much. I think personally I've learned a lot, and I know a lot of people out there have learned a lot. So thank you for joining us on this episode of the Crisis of Manhood podcast. You can join the next episode after next week, where we'll bring you a new topic. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, if this information has been helpful to you, please pass it on by sharing to your circles. Once again, this has been the Crisis of Manhood podcast, and we have been joined with Mr. Mtale, a seasoned community service worker, if I can put it like that, because he does a lot of work in the community, and he's making such an impact in the community, and we are really blessed to have him today on the podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you.